Most people think that they're struggling with motivation, discipline, or confidence. But the truth is, they're running an outdated operating system that they never even chose. Your thoughts, your decisions, your reactions, your emotional patterns, all of it is being controlled by a mental OS that you never even were aware that was running. And if you don't upgrade it, you're going to lose to people who have. So what is a mental operating system? A mental operating system is essentially working with inputs that then drive your processing of these inputs. Then there's the interpretation, okay? And then you have your decision, okay? Decisions overall that you make. And then your decisions come down and lead to your action, okay? Your actions. And then from your actions, you get a certain outcome, okay? So you have your inputs in terms of the data that's coming in. You have your processing of how you're actually processing, viewing, seeing all that data. And then you have your interpretation. Okay, how am I seeing this? Is this an opportunity? Is this a challenge? Is this an obstacle, right? Is this an opportunity for growth? Whatever that may be. Then you're making a decision in terms of how you're going to react. And then you're going to take a certain action, or maybe you don't take any action at all. That's a lot of times what we often do, right? When we have something that is unfamiliar or that is not of our liking, we just won't do anything about it, or we'll kind of sweep it under the rug. So it's important to understand that the actions are then going to give you an outcome, right? This is how a mental operating system works, okay? In terms of how your mind is currently operating. So what we want to do is become aware of how this is working and the loops, the patterns that are going on here, and we want to make the proper adjustments, okay? This is essentially how you see the world, how you see yourself, how you think about different events in your life, in your experience, and essentially these are the standards that you live by, right? The values, the morals, the, what you think in terms of is good or bad, and the meanings that you're attaching to that. So this is essentially how you are experiencing the world, okay? And this is all a system and a process that until we are able to understand how it works, we're not going to be able to change it. And keep in mind, the mental operating system that we currently have, it's typically going to be something that is inherited through your family, through your experience, through your background, what you thought was and taught was good, what you thought was bad. Everything that has essentially been passed down to you from your family, friends, media, society, right? Conventional wisdom, all of that is essentially running through a pattern, right? Through a loop, through your whole experience. And that comes down to your mental operating system. So now let's go over the 3 levels of the mental OS. So there's 3 different levels here that we are essentially going to be at any given time, okay? So let's break these down. So let's draw a triangle, okay? And this is how I want you to see the 3 different levels. So this is going to be the majority of the people right here, okay? And then we're going to have 1% up here. So how do these break down in terms of the different levels? So level 1 is the reactionary, okay? This is the reactionary OS, okay? You're reacting to everything. You're not actually creating in terms of your experience, your life. You're not designing it. You're just reacting to events, to circumstances, to situations, okay? And then we have level 2, which is the strategic OS, okay? This is for those who are actually understanding what they need to get accomplished. They have a plan, they have a strategy, they have a method, they practice evolving themselves in terms of taking in information that's impactful, powerful, and they are able to really get things done, but they don't have it ingrained into their identity. It takes a lot of willpower for them to execute and to take action, but they're able to get a lot of things done. And keep in mind, this is not proportional. I would say it's probably going to be more like this, okay? This is the large majority of the people. This is the masses, okay? And then level 2 strategic is really where you got your high performers, okay? So this is going to be high performers, okay? And then up here at the top, you have the architectural OS, architectural OS. And maybe I spelled that wrong, but it's the architectural OS. This is the 1%. This is the people that actually are working and are existing through identity, okay? They've decided in terms of who they are, and they've deliberately decided that they're going to be a certain way, and they have chosen and they've designed their life to be a certain way that they believe, that they feel is who they truly are. And that's the biggest thing here, right? When you think about the 3 different levels, right? This is where you are in conscious control of your reality, of everything that you're doing. And that's why it's very few people, because most people are just living unconsciously, okay? They're reactionary to everything that's happening in their life. They're just, going through the motions, and then they're thinking that things are happening to them versus things happening for them, right? All of that is just a simple shift of perspective and shift of a lens, right? And then these guys are performing, right? They're making things happen. They're getting things done. However, it's at a cost of their willpower. And so they're essentially running with fuel, but that fuel is very limited in terms of how much they can actually do, right? There's a lot of friction there, right? They're kind of just overcoming and just hustle, hustle, hustle type of mentality and perspective oftentimes, right? Because there's no real identity here that they're running things from and through, right? Up here, you have a certain identity that you've established of, you always see positive, you always see things in terms of challenges as growth opportunities. You are deliberately designing your life in terms of, this is how I want to live. This is how I want to experience. This is how I deliberately chosen to see the world. And I decided to see the world as beautiful, as impactful, as growth, and as the world having lots of opportunities that are just waiting to get taken advantage of, right? There's always 2 different perspectives you can see the world from, right? There's the world of chaos, problems, issues, and you're going to see that through the media. But if you have deliberately decided, regardless of what's been on the news, the media, YouTube, whatever that may be, but if you decided that the world that you see your lens through, right, that you have created your own lens and you've decided, hey, well, you know what? This is how I've chosen to see the world, and the world is positive because I have deliberately decided, right? So this is where you're thinking in systems, you're thinking in structure, you understand that the world, reality, experience is structured. There's a natural order to things, right? It's not just random. Things don't just randomly happen to you. You don't just get into, arguments. You don't just get into car accidents or just, negative things happening to you, or quote unquote negative things happening to your experiences, okay? So, and one of the key distinctions between all of these different 3 groups is level 3, the architectural OS, they're not managing their mind, they're designing it. This is very, very important here. There's no management of mind. There's deliberate designing of how the mind is operating in terms of how they've chosen it to be, right? So this is the 3 different levels, okay, of mental OS. Okay, so now let's go over the 5 key components of a high-level mental OS. Okay, so the 5 key components here are really what outline what a high-level, high-performing mental OS looks like, okay? So, number 1 is the identity architecture, okay? Architecture. And your identity architecture is how you are choosing to see the world. This is how you are interpreting it based off of your identity, right? Who you've chosen to be. Because we're in this game of reality, life experience. We're playing ourselves in a movie, okay? And we are the lead actor, the director, everything, okay? Number 2 is the cognitive filters, okay? And these cognitive filters are how we are seeing experience. Are we seeing lack? Are we seeing opportunity? Are we seeing challenges? Are we seeing the negative aspect of something? Or are we always seeing events, experiences as learning experiences versus things that are happening to us, right? It's always about having the perspective of things are happening for us, not to us, okay? And then number three, this is the emotional system, okay? Emotional regulational system, okay? Regulation system. Now, this is how you are managing your emotions, okay? And this is very important here because emotions are something that are very unique and very interesting to talk about because emotions are not what you think they are. They're simply messages. They're messengers for you to understand that something is off or you have a certain experience in terms of you're excited or you're sad or you're mad. They are not you. They are simply experiences that you're having and feelings that you're having, and then you then get to attach a meaning to those feelings, right? Because think about a feeling of fear and excitement, right? Those two are essentially the same thing, but they are just about who and what you're attaching the meaning to, right? Let's say you're going to go and you're going to do skydiving, right? You can experience fear in that particular situation, in that particular experience, but then somebody else can have that same exact feeling, that same exact experience, but then label that as excitement, right? So that's the most important part here is emotions. They need to be understood. They need to be regulated in terms of they are not you. They're just messengers. And if you let them take over you and let them get the best of you, then that's going to affect everything that you do. And you're not going to be able to take action and do things from a level head because you're going to be very emotionally driven. That's why when you see like, a lot of people who are upset or mad or angry, they'll often try to take things out on physical objects. They, want to punch the wall or they want to go and, kick something or break something, right? Because they're filled with anger, right? Versus not identifying as anger or angry, right? Just being cognizant of like, hey, I'm experiencing this feeling right now. It's okay to feel it, but it's not me, right? It's just something that I'm going through. It's a message that something's going on here that is off, right? Let's take a look at this deeper. And then number 4, this is the decision protocols, okay? Or process. So this is essentially outlining and dictating how you're making your decisions. And this is where you need to be making decisions from your aligned self and your future version self, right? So if you're making decisions based off of past programming and past loops, then you're going to be doing the same thing over and over again. There's not going to be a change, right? There's not going to be any type of adjustment. But with making decisions and asking questions like, hey, the future version of myself, are they making this type of decision? What do they think about this? Would they be doing the same thing that I'm doing now? Or would they question it and would they think about it deeper, right? And reflect upon it. And the decision making is really important because you have to take action, right, in the physical real world. But if you're making decisions and you're taking action and you're just following an old script, an old, loop that's been happening, then you're not going to get a new outcome. You're going to get the same result. But just always questioning and thinking about what is my future version of myself doing? Are they doing this? How are they thinking about it, right? And then we have the environmental, okay? Number 5. Super important here because this is about who you're surrounding yourself, who you're hanging around. And the way that you can think about this is just your environment as a whole, okay? Who are you spending your time with? How is your, room? Is it clean? Is it cluttered? How is your living room? How's your bathroom, right? Just all of these different things that play a factor, whether you consciously are aware of it or not, right? All of these different things are playing a role and a factor, and they're often unconscious, okay? So you think about the people that you hang around with. If you're living in a place where you're trying to better yourself, but you have your family who's putting you down or who's limiting your thinking and your view, your perspective, because nobody else has ever done this, so why should I believe that I can do this if nobody I know in my family or my friends have ever made or had any kind of success, right? So environment is probably one of the most important factors in terms of you starting fresh and being able to, get around and be around people that are going to be uplifting, positive, and help you move in the right direction. Okay, so now let's talk about the mental OS of the 1%. So the mental operating system of the 1%, this is something that allows you to understand how these guys operate, right? And I would absolutely consider myself in that 1% in terms of understanding how I'm acting, reacting, or just creating my life as a whole, right? And I believe that I'm designing and creating my life exactly how I want it to be, okay? And let me break this down in terms of the hierarchy of this, okay? So we have a pyramid here, okay? Let's try to get this somewhat even here, okay? The mental OS of the 1% consists of these three factors, okay? Up here at the top, this is your identity, okay? And then here you have frameworks, okay? So think about your identity is who you are, how you're showing up, okay? Frameworks are in terms of how you think about the world, how you think about yourself. And then down here, this is your protocols. This is how you actually act, okay? And so think about it in the sense of identity is who you are, who you're becoming, okay? This is your becoming. Your frameworks are how you're thinking, okay? Do you think in positive type of mentality or mindset in that you see the world as a great opportunity, as a beautiful place? Or do you see it as limiting, as scarcity, based? And then the protocols are how you're actually acting, okay? This is the action aspect of it. And so here's the key thing that you need to keep in mind, that when your identity is leading everything, it absolutely creates full-blown, clear as night or day clarity, okay? Super crystal clear clarity. This is what you want. You want to be leading by your identity, and you want to be thinking in the sense of positivity and opportunity and progression. And then your action's always going to follow. So once this is intact, your identity, and you're thinking in terms of opportunity, you see growth, right? You're reframing everything that you're experiencing in a positive lens, your action's always going to follow. It's just inevitable. This is how you engineer success. When you start with the identity and then you update and upgrade your thinking patterns and you take the action, right? And then that is how you're just literally engineering success. And this is how the 1% always do this and have done this since the beginning of time. Okay, so now let's talk about the 4 mental frameworks that create an unfair advantage. And let's go over these one by one, okay? These are the frameworks that are going to get you to the next level, and they're going to give you an unfair advantage to your competition, because the competition doesn't really know about this, right? It's just a small percentage. 1% of people really understand this concept and these frameworks. And then there's not only the understanding of these, but then there's the conscious ability to actually execute on these and actually use them, right? So let's go through this here. First one here is first principles thinking. And we're going to go through these individually. First principles thinking. Then we have systems thinking, okay? We're thinking in systems in natural order. Number 3, this is inversion thinking, okay? And then number 4, future self decision making, okay? And so let's go over each one of these individually. So first principles thinking, okay? What is this? This is where we're breaking things down to their smallest and most fundamental components, okay? Think about it this way. Think about, let's say you have your car. Let's say somebody comes in and completely removes everything from your engine, right? Takes your whole engine apart so they can fully understand and see every single little component that goes into the engine, right? So it's about breaking things down so you fully understand how the whole system operates, okay? That's first principles thinking. And then we have systems thinking, number 2. Systems thinking is where you realize and you understand and acknowledge that nature, reality, has a structure to it. There's a natural order to things. You think about the seasons, right? You have the winter, you have the spring, you have the summer, you have the fall, right? And so that's a natural order that exists no matter what. And so that's what you need to keep in mind with systems thinking, is understanding that there's a natural order to things. Your mind works in a natural order, right? Your body is a system and it works naturally, right? You eat food to give you energy, and then you digest that food and then it comes out, right? So there's a natural order to things, and once you start looking at everything as a system, then everything changes for you, because you start understanding and realizing the underlying issues and things that are going to be, let's say, causing some havoc, or a cog in the wheel or a cog in the system, in terms of where things are falling off, right? But that's the key thing here, is systems thinking is understanding there's a natural order to things. And then we have inversion, okay? Inversion thinking, this is where you're thinking from the end in mind, okay? You're looking at, let's say you want to have success in a certain manner, okay? In a certain area. How can I make $10,000 a month, okay? Then you start looking at asking the questions of, how can I guarantee that I do not make $10,000 a month, okay? And you start looking at, okay, well, if I don't do anything, if I just sit on my butt and I just consume a bunch of content and never take any action, then I know that I can guarantee that I'm not going to get any level of success, let alone 10,000 a month, right? So that is the inversion thinking, is really flipping it on his head and just kind of thinking about, okay, what can guarantee me not to get something? And then let's look at all of those, and then let's do the opposite, right? That's really as simple as that gets. And then we have the future self decisions. I mean, this is so powerful here. When you start making decisions and thinking about it from the aspect and perspective of, hey, what would the future version of me be doing here? How would they react? What decision would they make, right? Because this allows you to really look at the future and to really look at 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 plus years down the road, and be able to look at, okay, what is that future version of me doing? Would they find this acceptable, right? One of the key things that has really worked for me and really helped in terms of decision making is looking at 5, 10 plus years down the road and asking the question, would that version of me be happy, be content, be okay with this decision that I'm making? Or would they say, hey man, you made the bad move, you made the wrong move, right? Think about it from that lens, right? About the future self, because right now we're existing in this moment, but it's like every second, every single moment that passes is the future, right? So what is that individual version of you, right? In the future, how are they seeing things? Would they make this decision, or would they, decide to not do anything at all, right? So having these 4 key components here is really, really important, because this gives you the unfair advantage ahead of everybody else and what allows you to be in that 1%. So now let's talk about, how do we install this new mental operating system? There's 4 key components here, and so let's go over each one of these individually, okay? So number 1, this is awareness, okay? We have to be aware of what's going on, what's happening, in order for us to make any change, any adjustment, right? First is like coming into a dark room and flipping on the light, right? Now we get to see, this is messed up over here, this is what's going on over there, right? So first, we have to be aware of what's going on, what's happening, okay? And then number 2 is the deconstruction, okay? This is where we're essentially deleting corrupted files. Think about your computer. We're deleting your recycle bin. There's a bunch of files in there that are taking up space. You got like 2 gigabytes left on your hard drive because you have all these files and data that is just useless and just taking up space. And a lot of them are corrupted, right? So we have to deconstruct that, right? The deconstruction aspect. And then number 3, this is the reconstruction, okay? This is where we build the new identity, new frameworks, right? We are deleting all of the corrupted files, all the different things that are a hindrance to us, right? That are not serving us. And then we are reconstructing it with new frameworks, right? New ways of thinking, new lenses of seeing the world, of impactful, positive opportunity, right? That's how we are reconstructing. And then there's number 4. This is the integration, okay? This is where you actually need to follow through with everything and take the action and make things happen, make the moves, right? And this is something that's also worked really well for me, okay? Highly recommend this. So what I would do is I would create recordings of myself saying affirmations, and then I would record them over like a binaural beat, and then I would create this audio, and then I would listen to it in the morning and before I went to bed. And I'm telling you, once you're able to do that for a good 30 to 60 days, you'll start to notice things really changing for you, because they're going into your unconscious, right? First, you have to actually want to change, right? There needs to be a deliberate want and almost like an obsession of like, hey, I know that my system is corrupted, but I want to change, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes, right, to change. There needs to be that conviction, right? So really using binaural beats and then having like your voice recorded over. And now there's even AI tools where you can clone your voice, and you can literally just type in the affirmation script and get one through AI, and then record that, and then listen to that while you're working or in the morning or before you go to bed. And those are super powerful, again, because they're going into your unconscious, to your subconscious mind, so that they can be programmed, right? And this is really the key thing here as well, is understanding that your subconscious mind is really operating the show here. It's running the show. And so that needs to get programmed. And that all happens through deliberate action and doing different things that are going to help you speed up, right, this whole process. And once you see yourself as the architect of your own reality, things start to shift for you, right? This is the unfair advantage aspect, because instead of trying to outwork people, you're outthinking them at the architectural level, right? Because you're architecting and creating deliberately your whole entire operating system, which is set to deliberately create your life, your experience, right? How you are and how you're experiencing the world. This allows you to have emotional mastery, strategic insight, natural confidence, and consistent execution. But it all starts at the identity level. Remember, the identity drives everything. Your identity is what drives who you are, how you see the world, and then you have your frameworks in terms of how you think and what you're thinking about in terms of whether something is positive or negative, right? The meanings that you're attaching to things. And then there's the action, right? The action and decision aspect of it all. So here's the thing. You were never behind. You were just operating with an old mental operating system. And once you upgrade that mental operating system, your life will never be the same.